Well, the husband is responsible for the loveliness of his wife. And we all know this. We all know this. This responsibility goes back all the way to the time of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Sir Gawain, his knight. And this continues on even today with modern day pastors saying that the husband is responsible for the loveliness of his wife. Can you believe it? If you're a husband or you're planning to get married, you need to know that in the modern day, dating all the way back to the Knights of the Round Table in the chivalrous days, you are responsible for the loveliness of your wife, for her beauty. Here we go. In the wedding of Sir Gawain, King Arthur must find out what women most desire in order to save his own life. Arthur meets an ugly woman, Ragnell, who promises to tell Arthur the answer if Sir Gawain, one of his knights, agrees to marry her in return. And so Sir Gawain agrees, and the ugly woman tells Arthur the answer to the riddle. King Arthur tells her that Sir Gawain accepts her terms, and she reveals to him what women desire most is sovereignty. Sovereignty. The ability to make their own decisions. That's what they desire most. With Arthur's life saved, the only thing remaining is for Sir Gawain to put his newfound wisdom into practice. And so Sir Gawain marries Ragnell and gives her sovereignty. As a result, he is blessed then with a beautiful wife. Here's how the story reads. The new pair retire to the bedroom. After a brief hesitation, Sir Gawain's assent to treat his new bride as he would if she were desirable, and he goes to bed with her and does his dutiful thing that he's supposed to do. But when he looks up, he's astonished to see the most beautiful woman he's ever seen standing before him instead of this old beggar witch. She explains that she had been under a spell to look like a hag until a good knight married her, and now her looks will be restored only halfway, or only half the day, only half the day. And so she gives Sir Gawain the choice to have her be beautiful at night or beautiful during the day. And so Sir Gawain, he gives her the sovereignty to make her own choice. Well, this lifts the curse for good, and Ragnell is beautiful in the night and in the day. What an awesome thing for him. Now you say, what the heck does that have to do with anything today? Well, this is taught by some modern day pastors, again, that the husband is responsible for the beauty and the loveliness of his wife. You got to check this out. You got to hear this. That modern Christians, they teach a version of the same theme. Dr. Richard Strauss taught in the early 1970s that wives are responders. If her husband treats her right, she will blossom and become beautiful. If he doesn't, she will become or remain ugly. Here's what Dr. Richard Strauss says. The woman is a responder. This is the obvious role of someone who depends on another person. Flowers depend on sunshine and rain, and when they get it, they respond by blossoming into gorgeous, beautiful things. This is how God made a woman. She responds to what she receives. If she receives irritability, criticisms, disapprovals, unkindness, indifference, lack of appreciation, or lack of affection, she will respond with a defense mechanism such as bitterness, coolness, defiance, or nagging. Some women turn to drinking or submerge themselves in social activities. But if the woman receives love, she will respond with love and will blossom into the most beautiful creature under God's heaven. Wow. This was written in the 1970s. I wonder if this guy would write the same thing in 2023 with everything we know now, with women, just showing their cards on social media and all this kind of stuff. I wonder if he would write the same thing about that. But our man, Pastor Doug Wilson, now, and I like Doug Wilson. I do like Doug Wilson. But in this area, I just wonder, dude, what are you talking about? I mean, he's a good pastor. I like his stuff, but in this one place, you are blinded by chivalry. You really are. But here's what Doug Wilson says. He teaches something similar in his book, Reforming Marriage, if anybody's read that book. Wilson opens in chapter 4 with a feminist critique of the pressure women feel to keep themselves up. He says, love bestows loveliness in chapter 4. He says, a common assumption, this is Doug Wilson, in the world is that women must keep themselves up in order to keep a man. That's a pretty good assumption. That's a pretty good assumption. In the world of attracting and being attracted, women are taught to view themselves as being primarily responsible for their own attractiveness or loveliness. Yeah, they pretty much are. They are responsible for their own attractiveness and loveliness. I don't know who else would be responsible for it. You ever try to tell a woman to, hey, primp yourself up a little bit? I mean, you're going to get slapped across the face. Anyway, Doug says this viewpoint is inculcated early. Once young girls used to play with baby dolls, seeing themselves in the role of nurturing mother. Now they can be seen playing with Barbie dolls, seeing themselves in the place of the doll, and of course the doll is both pretty and stacked. Pressure is on and stays on for them to primp themselves up and keep themselves lovely. Now the problem, according to Doug Wilson, in his book, Reforming Marriage, is the patriarchy. Women should not feel pressure to conform to conventional standards of beauty. Their fathers and their husbands have the obligation to make them beautiful by loving them properly. Doug Wilson continues in his book, quote, the perversion in this is not that women desire to be attractive or lovely. The perversion is the modern divorce of a woman's loveliness from the behavior of her father and husband. Doug says there is nothing wrong with wanting a lovely garden. There is a great deal of folly in wanting a lovely garden which will tend and keep itself. The Bible teaches that a Christian husband is responsible for the loveliness of his wife. Before she is married, her father is responsible for that loveliness. When she marries, her husband assumes this responsibility. The husband's example in this kind of love is Jesus. Now, I can kind of maybe see how this could possibly work. But that would assume that the woman is in complete submission to her father first, and then when she gets married, she would be in complete submission to her husband. If he said, hey, don't wear that, take a shower, dye the hair, cut the hair, wear a dress, lose weight, whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. I mean, can you imagine instructing the modern woman like this? I mean, come on. Somebody give me a comment about this. Anybody give me a comment about this? This is some pretty odd stuff. Let me read on, though. Doug Wilson says, when a man takes a woman into his home, all who know them should expect to see her flourish and grow in loveliness in the years to come. If their wedding ceremony referred at all to the 5th chapter of Ephesians, was this not what he vowed he would do? I don't know. I need the sound of crickets in my head. Like, well, what does Ephesians 5 have to do with that? He says, as a husband treats his wife in the scriptural fashion, he should expect her to grow increasingly lovely. This is not because the husband has earned it, but rather because through the grace of God, he has been blessed. Where in Ephesians 5 is the promise made that if a husband treats his wife right, she will become more lovely and beautiful as a result of God's blessing? What on earth? We'll note that Pastor Wilson isn't writing about the kind of internal beauty that the Apostle Peter writes about in 1 Peter chapter 3. If he were writing about that, he would need to acknowledge that it is the wife herself who is responsible for cultivating this through her submission to her husband. There we go. Wilson devotes several pages to explaining that he is writing about physical beauty, and he even eventually explains, here's a quote, this may all seem like a belaboring of the obvious. Everyone knows that there are pretty women, but it is an important point for husbands to understand. Here we go. When husbands undertake the assigned responsibility of loving their wives in such a way that they grow in loveliness, They need to understand that the result will be visible. This does not mean that with the right husband, all women could be equally beautiful. Obviously not. He says some women had the advantage of a greater natural beauty. Well, duh. And others had exceptional fathers, men who treated their daughters right. I don't know. I know some women that daddy treated them like daddy's little princess, and they are ugly. They're ugly. Like, anyway. Doug says, but it does mean that a man who marries biblically should expect his wife to be visibly lovelier on their 10th anniversary. And if not, he knows that he is the responsible one. In 10 years, I'd just like to do a survey. Hey, please post in the comments here. Does anybody know a woman in the modern day, this is 2023, in the modern day, that after 10 years of marriage, she looks better than she did when they got married? How many women can even fit into their wedding dress in 10 years of being married? And maybe his response will be, well, of course they couldn't do that because they're not being loved correctly. They're not being loved. I don't know, man. I mean, Doug's a good guy. I really respect most of his stuff, but like, this is out in left field. Like, what on earth? He says, but as the one responsible, meaning the husband, he has to know where true beauty begins. Every husband should learn how to ask, what will living with a man like me do to this woman's appearance? Well, eventually Wilson in his book does get around to quoting 1 Peter chapter 3, but he only does this after creating a fictitious biblical requirement for husbands to make their wives physically beautiful. Wilson explains that 1 Peter chapter 3 must be read as an injunction to husbands to make their wives physically beautiful by loving her as Christ loves the church. He says, Peter urges this internal gentleness upon the wives. But taking the teaching of all of Scripture into account, we can see that a woman concentrates on this under the loving oversight of a husband. As he loves her, she bears fruit. As she bears this fruit, it delights him, and this delight he loves her more, and she bears more fruit. The wife is to cooperate fully, receiving his love, but he is the one responsible to give it. I would ask Doug, where are all these women who are cooperating fully? They just cooperate fully. They just submit fully. They submit in all things to their. Where are these women at? Where are these women at? I'd like to meet a few. I mean, I live in a conservative area of the United States of America. I go to conservative churches. I know some good women, but they don't do this. They don't do this. I mean, come on. Where is this coming from? But again, to sum up, the husband is responsible for the loveliness of his wife, going all the way back to King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. We have been blinded by chivalry that much in the church. We got to get it turned around, folks. We got to get it turned around. All that being said, Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Post Millennial Man.